Hello, Alabama. This is really interesting. It's almost unbelievable to some. How could anyone not have thought of this? But it seems to be very interesting for Bama. Before the news comes, subscribe and continue receiving more Bama news. The probability of computers is in Bama's favor and against Georgia. Let's analyze this. Alabama football, despite some underwhelming performances, remains a giant in the college football landscape. Recent updated numbers from several computer models favor the Crimson Tide, which brings relief to those who were beginning to question the team's potential after a tough outing against USF. Fan perceptions are often volatile, especially when a program as successful as Alabama shows signs of vulnerability, but the numbers don't lie and, for now at least, the algorithms are on Alabama's side. The relationship between fans and computer predictions is undoubtedly complicated. Many fans live in a love-hate relationship when it comes to trusting algorithmic data, especially when it comes to rankings. But when that data is in the Crimson Tide's favor, as it is now, it serves as a shot of confidence, an antidote to the growing concern. ESPN Analytics, for example, now predicts that Alabama has a better chance of winning most of its remaining matchups, including its highly anticipated game against Georgia, the defending national champion. This shift in outlook is not to be ignored. ESPN's matchup predictor, which previously favored Georgia with a 59.1% chance of winning the September 28 matchup, now has Alabama ahead at 52.6%. That may seem like a small difference, but considering the weight of expectations surrounding the Bulldogs, it's a significant shift. The Crimson Tide, under coach Kalen DeBoer, are finding their feet again and, if the current numbers are any indication, are poised to take on one of the season's biggest challenges with a bit more confidence. Of course, college football is notoriously unpredictable. As any seasoned fan knows, rankings and computer predictions can be volatile. Week by week, those numbers change based on on-field performance, and nothing is guaranteed. However, even with uncertainty about the future, the fact is that, for now, Alabama is in a comfortable position in most projections. ESPN's analysis also gives us a clear view of how the Crimson Tide stacks up in the rest of the season. Against Wisconsin, for example, Alabama is a heavy favorite, with an impressive 92.1% win probability for the September 14 matchup. And that dominance continues in other games, with the team favored in matchups against Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Missouri, and Auburn. Even in the road games against LSU and Oklahoma, Alabama appears as a favorite, with 82.3% and 74.6%, respectively. The only game where there was a slight drop in analyst confidence was against Tennessee. While Alabama is still a favorite, the win probability has dropped from 58% to 56%, indicating that this could be a more even matchup than many expected. Still, there's no doubt that the Crimson Tide has the ability to overcome any adversity, especially when you consider the caliber of players and the talent that continues to emerge from Tuscaloosa. While ESPN's algorithms and numbers paint a rosy picture for Alabama, other computer prediction sources are also favorable to the Crimson Tide. Sagarin's rankings, one of the most respected in college football, rank Alabama as the fourth best team in the country, behind only Georgia, Texas, and Ohio State. In the Laz Index, another reliable source, Alabama ranks number 1 above all other teams, which reinforces the notion that the Crimson Tide is still a force to be reckoned with. There's no denying that the season is still in its early stages, and a lot can change over the next few weeks. However, these numbers serve as a shot in the arm for Alabama fans, who have been experiencing emotional ups and downs with the team's performance thus far. The narrow win over USF may have left many wondering if the team is prepared for the big challenges ahead, but the computer predictions are here to remind us that the Crimson Tide remains one of the powerhouses in college football. Looking ahead, Alabama football still has a long way to go, but if these computer models are correct, the team will be ready to take on its biggest rivals and perhaps reclaim its place at the top of college football. That's interesting and unexpected, don't you think? The Alabama Crimson Tide had another hard-fought victory against South Florida, but they did not come away unscathed. In addition to losing starting left tackle Caden Proctor, wide receiver Cole Adams also suffered an injury during the game. In the fourth quarter, on a first down play that gave Alabama a scoring opportunity, Adams went down after contact, visibly in pain. Adams' injury occurred at a crucial moment in the game, and his exit was a blow to the Crimson Tide. While the team celebrated the victory, concern for Adams' health loomed over the team. Coach Jaylen Milo told reporters after the game that Adams had suffered an arm injury, but that he did not have any further details at the time. The scene of Adams leaving the field with a sling on his right arm and a towel over his head as he headed to the locker room caused concern for everyone. The young wide receiver, who arrived at Alabama as a promising prospect in the 2023 class, is still developing within the program. Rated as a 3-star recruit by 247 Sports, Adams had great potential and had been gaining experience over the past 2 seasons. Although still in the process of adapting to college football, he had already shown flashes of his ability, racking up receptions in limited games and contributing especially on punt returns. The injury is a setback not only for Adams, but also for the team, which is looking for consistency in its wide receiver group. With just 2 receptions for 11 yards in 2024, Adams was establishing himself as a solid option within Jaylen Malo's offense, and this interruption in his season could mean another missed opportunity for the young athlete. For Coach Malo, depth on the roster is a constant concern, and the loss of Adams, even if temporary, could impact the team's rotation and offensive performance. Adams has already shown his worth in sporadic moments as a punt returner, accumulating 42 yards on 7 returns in 2023. He is not only an additional piece of the offense, but also a versatile player who contributes in different areas of the field. The uncertainty surrounding the severity of his injury has everyone on edge, and Adams' return will be closely monitored in the coming weeks, as his recovery could be crucial for the rest of the season. The impact of Adams' absence will depend on the severity of the injury, but the Alabama coaching staff is certainly already thinking about possible options to fill the void. With the schedule getting more challenging, the Crimson Tide's roster depth will be tested, and each player will have to elevate their game to make up for losses like Adams and Proctor. Despite being considered a 3-star recruit, Adams has shown great potential throughout his career thus far, ranking as the 61st best wide receiver in his class and the 5th best player in the state of Oklahoma, according to the 247 Sports composite. He was recruited with the expectation of developing within the program, and while his production thus far has been modest, his talent is undeniable. However, this is yet another hurdle he will have to overcome in his young career. Alabama, known for its tradition of developing great talent in college football, is hoping that Adams' injury is a short-term event. While it is too early to know the full impact of his absence, it is certain that the Crimson Tide will face a challenge in the coming weeks, both in terms of tactical adjustments and overcoming adversity. DeBoer's team will need to regroup quickly to maintain the momentum of the season and continue its quest for more wins while Adams begins his recovery process. This injury to Cole Adams adds another layer of complexity to Alabama's 2024 campaign, which already faces challenges in different areas of the roster. But let's move on. What about Jaylen Milo? The Alabama Crimson Tide faced an unexpected test against South Florida, but quarterback Jaylen Milo shined in the fourth quarter, leading the team to a 42-16 victory. Despite a surprising struggle that lasted nearly 50 minutes, the 4th-ranked Crimson Tide managed to hold off underdog South Florida in the crunch moments. Milo, who ran for 2 touchdowns and threw for 2 more in the fourth quarter, was instrumental in securing the victory. The game, which began with Alabama being the overwhelming favorite, quickly turned into an unexpected challenge, especially with turnovers and penalties that kept the game tight for much of the half. For head coach Jaylen Milo, it was a stark reminder that college football demands excellence from start to finish. In the fourth quarter, staying away from penalties and turnovers, it's amazing what can happen, Malo said after the win. Alabama entered the fourth quarter leading just 14-13, a concerning margin for a team that came in with high expectations and boasting a significant winning streak. However, Milroe then led the Crimson Tide offense with touchdown passes of 16 yards to Kobe Prentice and 43 yards to rookie Ryan Williams. Jamarian Miller added an explosive 56-yard touchdown run, while Justice Haynes rounded out the scoring with a 29-yard run in the final minutes. Miller was another standout, racking up 140 rushing yards, showing the depth of Alabama's running attack even on a night when the team struggled to find a rhythm in the first 3 quarters. That offensive explosion in the fourth quarter made all the difference and put the win in convincing fashion on the final scoreboard. Despite the interesting score, Alabama's performance raised some concerns. 3 fumbles in the second half and 13 penalties for 120 yards show that there is plenty of room for improvement, especially with tougher opponents on the horizon. DeBoer, in his second game as the Crimson Tide's coach, will certainly have his work cut out for him. The rotation on the offensive line, with Caden Proctor out for the second straight game due to a shoulder injury, also contributed to some issues, with makeshift substitutions that led to crucial penalties. Geno Vandemark and Wilkin Formby were called multiple times for holding, negating key plays. For Milroe, this was a life-affirming win, especially after a turbulent year last season in which he was briefly sidelined as a starter. Milroe completed 17 of 27 passes for 199 yards and showed resilience after a series of mistakes. His ability to bounce back and lead the team in the crunch was key to securing the win. South Florida, on the other hand, showed unexpected resilience. Coach Alex Golesh said his team did exactly what it needed to do for 3.5 quarters, keeping Alabama under pressure. Quarterback Byram Brown rushed for an impressive 108 yards while passing for 103. South Florida showed that, while it may not be at Alabama's level, it can still cause problems, especially in games where the odds are so heavily favored. This game was also a reminder that college football is unpredictable, and even the biggest favorites can face tough battles. Alabama, despite its early setbacks, demonstrated the ability to adjust and finish strong. The test against South Florida, while far from perfect, could serve as an important learning experience for the rest of the season. While DeBoer's team didn't quite replicate the impeccable performance it had in its opening game against Western Kentucky, this narrow win provides an opportunity to correct mistakes and adjust the team's mindset for the challenges ahead. The win against South Florida keeps Alabama undefeated and in a good position to continue in the rankings, but the warning signs cannot be ignored. Milroe's ability to stay calm under pressure and lead the team in crucial moments will be tested repeatedly this year. Now, with 2 games played, Alabama needs to show that it can maintain its consistency and avoid the mistakes that nearly cost it the game against South Florida. The SEC back-to-back games are coming up, and a much higher level of performance will be needed to ensure that the Crimson Tide remains in contention for the national title. Let's move forward with these challenges ahead. Have you subscribed to the channel yet? Subscribe now. Let's keep going. What about the Bama team itself? Let's reflect. While the 42-16 scoreline may seem dominant, the reality on the field was different, with Alabama racking up 4 touchdowns on its final possessions to secure the result. This performance raised questions about the true potential of Kalen DeBoer's team, but the hope of a strong comeback remains alive. According to projections from Andy Staples of On3 Sports, Alabama is still expected to qualify for the college football playoffs as an at-large team, occupying the number 8 seed in a 12-team scenario. Should this projection come true, the Crimson Tide would face the USC Trojans in the first round, with a possible quarterfinal battle against the number 1 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes in sight. This projection puts Alabama in an intriguing position, especially considering that Kalen DeBoer, during his tenure as head coach of the Washington Huskies, has already come away with a win over Lincoln Riley and the Trojans. A potential quarterfinal matchup with Ohio State would be fraught with interesting narratives, including the transfers of key players like Caleb Downs, Seth McLaughlin, and promising quarterback Julian Sayin, who have all left Alabama for Ohio State. The rivalry between the programs would only add to the appeal of this game, creating a must-see scenario for college football fans. However, for Alabama to solidly position itself on the playoff trail, it will be essential to step up its game in the coming weeks. Games against Western Kentucky and South Florida were valuable opportunities to correct mistakes and get back into the swing of things, but more significant challenges await Kalen DeBoer's team. The upcoming matchup against the Wisconsin Badgers on the road will be a true test, followed by a crucial matchup against the number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs 2 weeks after the bye week. These upcoming games could define Alabama's future this season. If the team can show significant improvement, especially in terms of discipline and execution, as highlighted by Coach DeBoer after the win over South Florida, the Crimson Tide could bolster their playoff bid and prove that they are still one of the powerhouses in college football. The SEC, as expected, is well represented in Staples' predictions, with 5 other members of the conference projected to make the playoffs: Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Missouri. This highlights the level of competition Alabama faces within the conference, and any slip-up could be decisive in the postseason picture. Alabama continues to search for a solid identity this season, and if the team can fix the issues it had against South Florida, especially regarding penalties and turnovers, the potential for growth is immense. The defense, led by emerging talent, needs to solidify and provide more security in crucial moments, while Milroe's offense continues to adjust and find consistency. The next steps will be critical in determining Alabama's fate. With a key win against Wisconsin, the Crimson Tide can enter the matchup with Georgia with more confidence and, who knows, set the stage for a complete turnaround this season. The mindset now must be one of constant improvement, correcting mistakes and taking advantage of opportunities that arise. The support of the fans and the confidence in DeBoer's ability as a coach are essential components to keeping the team focused. Let's stay focused and mentally in the right place. And the defensive line. Let's talk a little about it. The game against South Florida showed that, even with a win on the scoreboard, the Alabama Crimson Tide still has a lot of work to do, especially on the offensive line. With a final score of 42-16, many would have expected a smooth outcome, but the reality was quite different. Alabama struggled unexpectedly for much of the game, holding a lead of just 2 points at the end of the fourth quarter. And much of the trouble came from the offensive line. Coach Kalen DeBoer was quite honest in his observations about the group's performance. He highlighted the lack of reps together as a major factor in the underwhelming performance. "I think a lot of it is just the number of reps they got together," DeBoer said, referring to the limited practice the group had the week before the game. This lack of harmony resulted in a number of miscommunications and poor decisions during the game. Injuries also played a significant role. Starting left tackle Caden Proctor was sidelined with a shoulder injury, forcing changes to the line. Left guard Tyler Booker also did not play, and Geno Vandemark was called in to fill the void. The constant changes and adjustments to the line prevented Alabama from achieving the level of consistency needed to dominate South Florida early on. However, the most glaring problem was the penalties. 5 holding infractions negated several key plays, including touchdowns. The Crimson Tide was also penalized for an illegal block and 2 false starts, resulting in a total of 70 yards lost in penalties that directly affected the flow of the game. Alabama center Parker Brailsford was blunt in pointing out the solution: "We just need to be more disciplined." And he's right. The lack of discipline on the offensive line hurt the team's progress in crucial moments, and that was evident when a snap error between Brailsford and Jaylen Milo resulted in a fumble in the red zone. This play could have extended the lead and given the team more control, but instead it gave South Florida the ball back. Jaden Roberts, playing right guard, had a solid performance, but Wilkin Formby struggled considerably at tackle. Much of the pressure on Milroe came from Formby's side, and he even committed 3 of Alabama's holding infractions. When Elijah Pritchett replaced Formby, the line began to find more stability, and the Tide managed to score in the final moments of the game, increasing the lead over the Bulls. Even so, Brailsford was quick to defend his teammate, saying that no matter who was on the field, the result would have been the same because the problem was the lack of cohesion among everyone. That offensive line unit, which struggled so much against South Florida, will be put to the test again, this time in a matchup against Wisconsin, the first Power 4 opponent of the season. This game, on the road, will be an important test for the Crimson Tide. Communication needs to be improved, discipline needs to be maintained, and the group will have to show that it can learn from the mistakes of the last games so as not to make the same mistakes against a stronger opponent. Looking ahead, the lessons learned from the South Florida game are clear. Brailsford summed up the attitude the team needs to adopt going forward: just do your job. It's not about heroics or individual attempts to win the game, but about working together as a unit, with focus and discipline. If Alabama can follow this formula, it will be possible to see a more solid team, prepared to face the challenges that lie ahead this season. The talent is there, but the execution still needs to be fine-tuned. DeBoer and his coaching staff have a challenge ahead of them, but with specific adjustments and greater familiarity among the players, there is room for improvement. Alabama fans can expect a more forceful response in the next matchup, where the offensive line will have a chance to show that it has learned from its mistakes and is ready to protect its quarterback and pave the way for more victories. The game against Wisconsin will be decisive, and the performance of the offensive line will be a central point for Alabama's success. There's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot: the 1-0 mentality. It's a simple but powerful approach that DeBoer brought with him, and it's become a core tenet of the football team. The idea behind this mentality is clear: focus on the next moment, the next snap, and win in the present, regardless of what happened before. And of all the Alabama players, Jam Miller exemplified this philosophy in a remarkable way. On the field, this mentality manifests itself most visibly. And last Saturday, in a game against South Florida, Jam Miller provided an object lesson in how this mentality can influence an athlete's performance. In the third quarter, on a play that looked promising, Miller ran down the right side of the field for an impressive 13 yards. But at the end of the run, he made a mistake that could have changed the course of the game: he fumbled the ball. The fumble was recovered by the Bulls, who quickly capitalized, scoring a touchdown on the next drive to cut Alabama's lead to 1 point, 14-13. Miller's frustration with the mistake was evident. "Sure, I was a little upset about it," the running back admitted after the game. But what really set Miller apart was his ability to not let that moment define him. He could have easily let it get him down, allowing the fumble to weigh on his performance for the rest of the game. Instead, he embraced DeBoer's 1-0 mentality more than any other player on the field. DeBoer's philosophy isn't just about forgetting mistakes. It's about facing challenges head-on, learning from mistakes, and most importantly, moving forward with determination. Miller understood that perfectly. His mistake wouldn't determine how he would be remembered in that game, and he didn't let the fumble stop him from contributing. He returned to the field with even more focus, proving that despite the mistake, he was ready to win the next snap. This ability to bounce back quickly is what defines great players and winning teams. DeBoer's Crimson Tide is shaped by this philosophy, and Miller is leading by example. While others might be deterred by a critical mistake at a crucial moment in the game, he chose to focus on what was ahead, not what had already happened. And it's exactly this type of resilience and focus that DeBoer is instilling throughout his team. Miller's fumble, while frustrating, was also an opportunity to demonstrate the true strength of character that Coach DeBoer wants to see in his players. The ability to overcome adversity in real time, to keep moving forward, is what will allow Alabama to continue to grow and improve throughout the season. In football, as in life, mistakes are inevitable. But it's how you respond to those mistakes that determines your long-term success. Jam Miller has shown that he understands this better than anyone. The impact of the 1-0 mentality extends beyond the field. In the locker room, during practice, and even in daily interactions, this philosophy is shaping this Alabama team to face any obstacle. Every player is being challenged to adopt this approach, and each week, it becomes more evident in their performance. But few have exemplified it as clearly as Miller last game. The lesson that Jam Miller taught us against USF is clear: no matter what happens, it's how you respond that matters. Miller's response to his mistake was the epitome of DeBoer's philosophy, and his ability to bounce back quickly is exactly what Alabama will need as the games get tougher. What do you think? Let us know in the comments.